What is up? Welcome to No Punt Intended. The 2024 season is officially over, and that means we're on to 2025, baby. And even before we get to the rookie drafts, that starts with free agency. And for the next 4 weeks, we are going to break down some of the highest priority free agents, possible landing spots, what we think of these guys and where they're going to end up. And that starts with the quarterbacks tonight. Let's get into it. Welcome to No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. I am your host, Ryan Weisse, because Joe Zolo is back to his slacking ways now that we are in hockey season. And guess what? Our guest got sick as well. So for the second night in a row, you get me and Joshua Hudson. How are you doing tonight, buddy?
I got to carry another show. God damn it.
Exactly. At least this one we'll be able to fight a little bit. I spend so much time hosting in the mock draft shows. I think about this often. I barely get to hear what you guys say. I hope the fans are paying attention because I'm trying to figure out the next topic. With this one, I know what we're going to talk about. And
you got a show sheet in front of you.
Yes, I have a show sheet. How are you in your Super Bowl hangover, Josh?
It's going, man. I'm still trying to get my voice back. But luckily, this is the only show that I've had to do today. I get to actually go to bed early tonight. We'll see how tomorrow brings. But you know what? I'm enjoying it. It's good to be a Super Bowl champ. Go Birds, baby.
Yeah, 3 shows in 24 hours. That's a lot after partying all Sunday night, I imagine. So, well, we're glad to have you. We're ready to talk some quarterbacks. Before we do that, guys, I want to remind you, we are still partnered with the great folks over at Dynasty Nerds. If you guys are looking to become a better Dynasty manager, Dynasty Nerds has the tools that are going to help you do so. And if you use our promo code Club Fantasy, you're going to get 15% off that membership. So check out some of the great stuff they have going on over there. I know we use it literally for the next 2 months. We're going to be using it for a ton of different stuff. They do the Nerd Film Room and all of the great tools that they have at their disposal. And you can get 15% off of that membership using promo code Club Fantasy. If you're looking to help the show out, you can get something good for yourself, get us a little bit of money. Why not? That's kind of how I look at it. Josh, we had in the show sheet, let's argue about the Super Bowl, but you and I did a show yesterday that we didn't really expect to do, and Joe Zolo's not here. I will throw this out because Joe's going to get mad if I don't mention it live on air. Joe, the perpetual hater, wanted everyone to be aware that Patrick Mahomes now in 5 appearances in the Super Bowl has more interceptions than Tom Brady in 10 appearances in the Super Bowl. Joe said we were too cowardly to talk about it, Josh. I don't know. It is what it is. It was a rough Super Bowl, Josh, but I wanted to throw one thing out that we touched on yesterday, but I wanted to get back to it, is I'm seeing a lot, and I kind of tiptoed on this line yesterday. I'm seeing a lot of like Patrick Mahomes' legacy is destroyed after one bad game. And I'm like, these guys had one of the best fucking seasons we've seen in a long time. It's just that their bad came in the worst possible time. I think there's a lot of overreacting, and myself included, to what happened with the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday.
This is just the internet of today. It's everybody, like the moment somebody starts saying, oh, this guy can be an all-time great, no matter, every single move that they make is under a microscope. And it's always, oh, well, this performance didn't stack up because, he hasn't played anything close to what Tom Brady has played, right? Like there's still the constant debate amongst, is Joe Montana the GOAT because he went undefeated in Super Bowls?
Never lost.
Tom Brady lost 3 of them, right? Like there's always going to be something. Patrick Mahomes has played, it started 7 seasons. He's played 7 seasons.
Yep.
And we're like anointing this guy the GOAT, and his career may not even be halfway over.
Yeah.
Like it's very premature for starters.
It is.
And the amount of Super Bowls that Tom Brady won at this point in his career is literally equal to what Patrick Mahomes has won.
I was going to say, it's premature, but it also speaks to what Mahomes has done. And we should just kind of take that in as well, that, like you said, he's technically not halfway done. And we're talking about him being the greatest quarterback of all time, possibly. I don't know of any quarterback, not even Brady. It took Brady 10, 11 years in before we were like, okay, maybe we need to talk about this guy in the same breath as Montana.
Well, and I mean, like after they win in 2004, he goes how many years without winning another one?
Exactly.
So like if Patrick Mahomes ends up winning the Super Bowl again next year, are we back to Mahomes is the GOAT because he's now won 4 before Tom Brady won his 4th? Like
now we got I say now we got the narrative flipping back on top of its head. So that's going to be
exactly. So that's what I'm saying. It's like people just want to shit. They just want to shit on people, and they just want to create controversy because the shit that goes on in their own life just isn't interesting enough. Apparently. That's really what it boils down to me.
Yeah. Welcome to the internet. That's what it really boils down to. The chat is super quiet tonight. If you guys have any questions about quarterback free agency, drop it in the chat. We're going to talk about a lot of names. If you have some ideal destinations, make sure you check those out or drop those in the chat too. And speaking of which, our good buddy HoopTube is doing an entire series on ideal destinations for quarterbacks where he thinks they're going to end up. We are through 5 divisions. He has the entire NFC finished and just published the AFC North this morning. So if you guys go to clubfantasyffl.com, you can check out Hoop's great series where he breaks down some of the moves he thinks teams should be making in their quarterback rooms and some of the fantasy impact of that. So check that series out as Josh and I get started. We're moving along. We got teams with quarterback questions, Josh. So basically, these are the teams that when we look at them, we think maybe they're going to be interested in the quarterback situation. So, Josh, I'm going to list some of these off and let's talk about them. So we got the Tennessee Titans. Obviously, Will Levis hasn't really lived up to expectations. The Cleveland Browns. I don't think I need to tell you about the Cleveland Browns quarterback situation. Josh, I love your note for the New York Giants. They literally don't have a quarterback on the roster right now. The Las Vegas Raiders, Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, they're not going to be it. The Jets have said they're parting ways with Aaron Rodgers. The Colts, are they going to stick with Anthony Richardson? The Pittsburgh Steelers, right now, both of their quarterbacks are also free agents, and it doesn't seem like they're really that interested in bringing either one back. The Los Angeles Rams, is it time to move on from Matthew Stafford? The Minnesota Vikings have an interesting situation. They got a guy who was a potential MVP candidate, but he was never meant to be the starter. They have this rookie from 2024 that they maybe want to put the team in his hands. And Josh, I added the Seahawks because similar to the Vikings, I think it may be time for them to move on. For the Rams, it may be time for them to move on from Geno Smith and start focusing on the future with their rebuild. So, Josh, let's get started with, of these teams, who do we think makes the biggest splash? Are any of these teams a quarterback away?
I don't think any of these teams are a quarterback away. But I think that there's at least one quarterback that some team is going to make a splash on, and that's Sam Darnold, just given how effective he was this season with Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota. I mean, leading them to 14 wins, 35 touchdown passes, over 4,000 yards. Clearly, this was the type of season that the Jets envisioned getting from Sam Darnold when they spent, what was it, the 3rd overall pick on him?
Yeah.
So, at least he's showing that there is talent there, right? But I mean, you look at the teams that actually have available cap space, and I think that to me is what's going to be the most telling of who's going to make the big splash. The Raiders have the second most effective cap space at $85.8 million. The Vikings sit at 5 at $55.7. And then there's a pretty, I don't want to say steep, but you go about $18 million lower and you're getting the 12th most of the Steelers, the Titans at 13, Rams at 14, Giants at 15. So I think when you're looking at, but keep in mind too, I mean, some of these teams are going to go through some restructure. They're going to make some cuts, so there's going to be more money available here within the next month. And also keep in mind too, this is based on an estimated cap, right? The league has been going through and blowing away the estimated cap for the last 5 years.
I say, ever since
jumping,
2020,
$3 to $10 million up on some instances, right? So the estimated cap, I believe, over the cap set at about 278. It would not surprise me if it's 280 plus 290 because of all the new revenue that the league is generating, especially with all the overseas markets and all these different types of things, and all the streaming contracts as well.
Yeah.
So these numbers could go infinitely higher, right? And then you start looking at some of these second, third tier quarterbacks that could eventually make more money because teams just have it to spend and they value the quarterback position because it's the most important position in football, right?
Yep.
But to me, the only primo starter that should be getting paid out of this group, it's Sam Darnold. And the teams that I'm looking at here, I think the Titans are a dark horse. And if you want to play the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon here, you know, Brian Callahan, the head coach of the Titans, once worked in Cincinnati with Zach Taylor, who was once on the offensive staff for Sean McVay. Obviously, we know Sean McVay's former offensive coordinator was Kevin O'Connell, who is now the head coach of the Vikings, who just coached Sam Darnold to a career season, right? So there's going to be a lot of similar terminology. So I think when you're looking at the available teams, the Titans might be a destination that Darnold strongly considers because of the terminology in the playbook. Now, I think the Rams will be interesting simply because of Matthew Stafford's situation. He only has $4 million in guaranteed money for 2025. And if he's considered a post June 1st cut, Rams only take on $26 million in dead cap hit versus like 40 something million if they cut him before that, which that would then fall on the 2025 salary cap versus a post June cut where they could divvy up the 26 million, like 13 for this year, 13 for 2026. So, you know, if they decide to move on from Stafford, I don't think they will. I think they'll ultimately come to an agreement. So I think that's ultimately going to rule out Darnold from that instance. Okay. So, you know, obviously the Raiders being the team that has the most available cap space, they're going to make a ton of sense because maybe they want to make a splash because they're sitting at 6 and you don't know if you're going to have the ability to trade up into the top 2, the top 3 to maybe secure one of those top 2 quarterbacks. Those are kind of the teams that I would be specifically looking at to make the big splash because we know that Darnold can't play in New York. So that instantly rules out the Giants.
Yeah. I've seen so many people projecting him back to the Jets and I'm just like, stop. Nobody, this is not how the NFL works. I think the Titans are in an interesting position, Josh, because they have the first overall pick as well. Mm-hmm. And I just don't know, like Travis Hunter is probably a player that deserves the term generational talent because he does something that nobody else does.
Correct.
The issue is, and I use issue loosely, the Titans don't have a major need at corner. They do have a need at wide receiver. They have Calvin Ridley. They obviously paid him enough, but not an insane.
He's also 30 years old.
He's also 30 years old. And I just wonder, you have a roster that can win, and you have a division that's very winnable. I don't know that unless you are just sold on Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders. If I'm the Titans, I think I throw the money at Sam Darnold. And I don't even know that I trade that first pick, but I mean, I'm going to explore the trades, obviously. But trade out of that first pick and maybe get Travis Hunter, hopefully, 3 or 4 picks later, depending on who's looking to move up. I think that's how I would handle this if I were the Titans, because they've put so much money recently into that defense. And you're just kind of wasting it if you keep going from quarterback to quarterback to quarterback. Now, obviously, Callahan saw, go get your franchise quarterback and develop him. And if that's the path he's going to go, it's going to be Ward or Sanders with that first pick. And we're all going to be left high and dry. I do want to throw Jables up on the screen here. Titans fan says Justin Field of the Titans because he's a Fields fan and a Titans fan. So I don't know if that's the big splash, Josh, but that's where we're focusing on right now. We are going to break down all of the potential landing spots for some of these players at the end of the show. Josh, the Titans were kind of my number one just because of how winnable that division is. And then when you look at the rest of these teams, I think the most interesting team to make a splash is it's kind of hard to look at the Indianapolis Colts and not be like, oh, damn, they would have won if they had a real quarterback. And obviously we're a bunch of Anthony Richardson haters, but this is another roster, Josh, that has a 3-year window to keep winning with the current guys they have on it. You're not going to get much more out of Jonathan Taylor. Michael Pittman's 27 years old already. You have this great young slot wide receiver in Josh Downs. You just put money into AD Mitchell last year, or picks into AD Mitchell, capital into AD Mitchell, whatever you want to say. Is Anthony Richardson the answer? That's who I think could make a splash, because I look at it as making a splash as you don't see it coming. And I think the Colts could go out and be like, look, Sam Darnold, you're what we need to win our division. Because again, it's that same winnable division. So the Colts may be playing keep away from the Titans as well. So for my big splash, Josh, I was going to go Titans, but I think I'm going to go Colts because I think they could surprise some people and move off of Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty valid point. I mean, they already benched him once, right?
Yep.
And even when he came back, it's not like he looked that effective throwing the football. I mean, he has no short area accuracy. There's a lot of issues with Anthony Richardson's game that obviously he needs time to develop, but the Colts are just kind of stuck as this like mid franchise right now. Like they keep picking in the middle of the NFL draft. It's not going to help them get any closer to, a potential game changer at the quarterback position. But also too, it's like, do you go and do you get a veteran? Because veterans these days, they're not really the ones that are leading teams to championships.
So I wanted to ask you, you already touched on the Rams and you do think it'll be Matt Stafford. I added the Seahawks because they're kind of in a moment of transition yet again, even though it's just a new offensive coordinator. But they're going to have to start making some decisions about some key players on that team. And Geno Smith is in the last year of his deal, Josh. I believe he is 35, somewhere around that
35,
age.
36, somewhere.
And obviously last year put up some gaudy yardage numbers, but did not get the touchdown numbers that you would have expected or wanted, especially if you're a Seahawks fan, especially if you're Josh, a DK Metcalf fan, and wanted to see better things. It's not what we saw. If you are the GM of the Seahawks, are you looking at Darnold? Are you looking to make a move? Or are you just going to kind of ride this thing out with Geno for one more year and see what happens?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the play. Just sort of write it out. I mean, Geno is a very similar quarterback to Derek Carr and what they're capable of doing. Yeah. And Kubiak coming over from the Saints obviously worked with Carr last year for some of the season, until he was hurt. But so I think that, at least a healthy Geno can operate that offense pretty effectively. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. The Seahawks do need to do something at quarterback. And I think this is just a really bad year to need a quarterback. And it's not even because
I was Josh, when
and it's not even
sheet, I was like,
yeah, it's not even because there's a dearth of available free agents. This is just not a sexy quarterback class coming out of college either. Yeah. Like you have two guys that are likely to be first round picks in Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. And then you have a couple guys like Jackson Dart, maybe Jalen Milroe, maybe Kyle McCord. I've seen Dylan Gabriel's name thrown out. Like some of these guys could come in and just absolutely light up the combine. And then teams really start to dive more into their tape. Maybe one of them gets drafted in the top 15. Maybe one or two get drafted into the back end of the first because some of these teams trade up to, lock in that fifth-year option. Very similar to what the Ravens did way back when they traded up to get Lamar Jackson at pick 32. There's a lot of different ways that teams can kind of go about this draft. But I mean, and I feel like we say this every year, next year's class is going to be better until it's not, right? Inevitably, one of these quarterbacks that are supposed to be going high next year either decide not to come out. Maybe they suffer a bad injury. There's so many things that can look different ways that it's just kind of like, you got to make this decision. Like if you think that there's something within this quarterback that you can develop, go get the guy. But I think with Seattle, you kind of locked yourself into Geno. You hitched your wagon to a veteran who is giving you an opportunity to win, but just isn't good enough to get you over the hump.
Exactly.
And unless you're willing to just tear it all down and hope you hit it with one of your early picks, you're going to have to take dart throws on second, third, fourth round guys and hope you strike the same way that you did once upon a time with Russell Wilson.
What I think is interesting is we brought up Seattle and Tennessee, and specifically the AFC South and NFC West. Those feel like the most winnable divisions in football right now, for a team to like make a big splash. Cause you could throw NFC South in there, but the thing is they're all kind of set at their quarterback. I went and looked at Derek Carr to see if I need to add them to the list. They cannot cut this guy if their life depended.
No, they can't. Well, and I was going through and I was checking out, Hooves QB Scramble articles, which of course you can find on clubfantasyffl.com. 5 of them are up now. I think we've got 3 more to go. But he proposes a trade of Derek Carr for the Saints. And I went through and I was looking at the numbers. Cutting him outright is just not going to work.
Not possible.
But they can trade him for a very minimal cap hit, especially if it's post June 1st. So if they're able to make a move, say during the draft, where they can make it a post June 1st trade in a way, that actually would help their salary cap quite a bit. I won't spoil who has him going
go check the
to,
article.
but go read the article, the NFC or the AFC South Division. But there's ways out of it for the Saints. But again, like, what are you going to do? You're going to go into the season with Spencer Rattler? I mean, if that's what you're planning to do to, tank for Arch Manning and bring a Manning back to New Orleans where his father or his grandfather once threw, like, all right, cool. That's one way to look at it.
Yeah.
But I feel like anytime you're setting yourself up for that, it doesn't always go the way that you want it to. I mean, just look at the Dolphins, right? There was the whole tank for Tua, which they ended up getting him anyway, but it wasn't at the first pick, which is what they were ultimately aiming for. So.
Nah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Josh, we've been alluding to some of this class. Let's go ahead and list off the class. So Josh was able to break down the major free agents at quarterback. So I'm just going to rattle these off, Josh. We can talk about some of the guys that we like, that we don't like. Sam Darnold, it's a void year, so he should be out there. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, both leaving the Pittsburgh Steelers. Daniel Jones, obviously, was a midseason pickup for the Vikings. He's going to be back out on the market. Jameis Winston, similar situation to Sam Darnold. Zach Wilson's out there now. Trey Lance is out there now. Jacoby Brissett after 1 year with the Patriots. Marcus Mariota, Drew Lock, Andy Dalton, Joe Flacco, Mac Jones, Jimmy Garoppolo, Cooper Rush. But those aren't the only names, Josh, because we could see Kirk Cousins out there after the benching for Michael Penix. As you pointed out, we could see Matthew Stafford out there. Who knows what's going to happen with the Cleveland Browns and Deshaun Watson? For those who haven't been following that saga, he was supposed to be in a walking boot, and they have TikTok footage of him not being in a walking boot. And then, of course, there was the second Achilles tear. And if they can prove he wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing, they could actually void his deal, which if you're Cleveland, I'd be looking for every way possible to avoid that deal, or to void that deal, rather. Aaron Rodgers, the Jets have said they are going to be moving on after he flew back to New York. When we're looking at extensions, Josh, it's probably just going to be Brock Purdy. Your wonderful note of the 2022 was not a great class for quarterbacks. So Josh,
the only one of those quarterbacks that won a Super Bowl was Kenny Pickett as a backup.
I think about that class all the time.
But you know what? Maybe the Steelers were right because they did pick Kenny Pickett first, and he's the first one to win a Super Bowl. So, there's that.
I think about that class all the time because we get so bored over these next 3 months that we built up Malik Willis and Desmond Ridder in our heads and Kenny Pickett in our heads because they had to be the best 3 quarterbacks. So, of course, they were going to be the best 3 quarterbacks. And, God, how bad was just that class and how bad was
you look at all those available quarterbacks that I listed off. How many of them were the ones drafted from 2021 in the first round, right? Mac Jones, Trey Lance, Zach Wilson. All those guys were drafted that same year as Trevor Lawrence, and Lawrence was the only one that got a contract extension. Justin Fields also in that conversation.
Yeah. Super, super interesting stuff. Josh, the first question I wanted to go with this is, it's obviously not the sexiest list of names, but who are your favorite quarterbacks from this class? If you were looking to build a team, who would you go after? If you want to give me like a top 3, but way more importantly, who would be your priority? It's probably Darnold, but just still asking, if you're trying to build your own team right now, who would you go after from this class?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be Darnold. I mean, he's the one. I mean, outside of Jameis, he's the only one that's actually thrown for 30 touchdowns. That is somewhat young. I don't want to, discredit Russell Wilson by any means because he's also done that. But, Darnold being 28.
Those days are behind him.
Yeah, exactly. Darnold being 28, having his best season of his career. Like, if I'm in dire need of a quarterback, like, that's the guy that ultimately I want to look at, especially if I'm not in a position to get one of those top 2 guys, or if it's going to cost me mortgaging a lot of draft picks that I need to continually build my team. when I was going through and really looking at this, like it would make a ton of sense for the Raiders to like throw everything at Darnold because they have, the most money available of teams that need a quarterback.
Yeah.
So it would make the most sense. And for them, that would basically let the draft fall to them. They wouldn't feel the need to trade up into that top 2, top 3 to get Sanders or Ward. And then if one of them happens to fall at 6, they can, make that pick. Because in reality, most free agent contracts are essentially 2-year deals, right?
Yeah.
They're usually going to be heavy guarantees in the first couple of years, easy opt-outs for teams if they don't fit the scheme or anything of that nature. So I can very much see that being a Sam Darnold type contract and easily the way that Vegas would want to structure that. But they need to kind of maximize their window, right? Because Pete Carroll's 73 years old.
Yeah.
So maybe you don't want to go the rookie route and you want to go the veteran route. So maybe Darnold is the option there. But as I said, I think the smart play for Darnold is to find a team that runs a similar system to the one you just had success in. And that's why I think if I'm Darnold, I'm going to the Titans.
Well, and that was something we talked about with Darnold often, was just how often he had to keep learning new schemes in the NFL. And you're absolutely right. Like, try to find the one that you're going to be able to figure out a little bit quicker so that you don't end up being Sam Darnold again.
Yep. And then my 2 others, they're backups that I kind of want to see in different situations. Jameis Winston, because, the dude is just a gem and I want every possible soundbite ever.
Oh my God.
But the thing is, he's also really good for team morale. Let's be real. I mean, the Saints locker room absolutely loved him. I mean, Cleveland loved him so much that they were tired of Deshaun. Like,
I covered the Browns for Football Guys in the preseason, and every report was about how Jameis was the most popular guy in camp. And I'm talking players, coaches, fans across the board. Jameis Winston.
I mean, even when he was doing the interviews and stuff during Super Bowl week, like, I mean, that dude was having the time of his life. So like, I'm really excited for post NFL career Jameis Winston as a reporter, truthfully. But I also too, like, we know he's not afraid to throw the football, and that's good for fantasy. So I think, one of these teams like the Giants, for instance, I think would be really smart to go after Jameis because that they want to groom a rookie quarterback. And for all of the successes and failures that Jameis has had, I think he can be a really good mentor for a young quarterback. Yep. And he's not afraid of the spotlight.
Oh,
so
New York ain't bothering Jameis Winston.
Exactly. Like, he could handle New York and all of us Malik Neighbors dynasty managers. That's tasty.
Yeah.
And then I really want to see Zach Wilson get another shot. I don't know that he's going to be a starter, but I think, spending a year with Sean Payton, who, is clearly very good with quarterbacks. I mean, we saw what he did with Bo Nix. We obviously saw how he groomed Drew Brees after a very up and down start to his career with the San Diego Chargers.
Yeah.
I would like to see him at least get an opportunity to start, but even if it's another backup role with an opportunity to maybe see some time, I'd be interested in that. And one note that I want to add for Zach Wilson, over the last 2 seasons in the regular season, there's only been one AFC quarterback that has beaten Jalen Hurts, and that's Zach Wilson.
Good Lord.
I'm just throwing that out there.
That's a stat.
I mean, obviously we know Patrick Mahomes beat him in the Super Bowl 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But in the regular season, Zach Wilson's the only AFC quarterback that's beaten him.
There you go. If you want to beat the Super Bowl champs, go get Zach Wilson.
Exactly.
I understand that where Zach Wilson came from to where he was going, but I can never get out of my head the image of when the black dudes on stage were dapping each other up and Zach Wilson just looked deer in headlights, petrified. And I'll never be able to pass on that to where Zach Wilson terrifies me. You mentioned the Raiders. I do want to throw Joe Ortiz up here real quick. Joe Ortiz says, let's beef up that offensive line and go trade for Derek Carr. Why does everybody want these guys to go back to where they came from? I just don't see it happening. Darnold's not going to the Jets.
I think Joe's whole point is that they go trade for Derek Carr. And it's ultimately going to lead to them sucking so bad
that they can get Archie Manning. Yeah. So yeah, I guess I can live with that. We're not talking rookies this week, but I do want to throw Jables up on the screen just real quick. Dylan Gabriel might be the next Justin Herbert, maybe his hot take. Give us about a month.
The lefty version of Justin Herbert.
Give us about a month. I think it's probably a month from today exactly. We'll be starting our Stars of Tomorrow series. I don't remember exactly how the schedule goes, Josh. So is it right after free agency we jump into Stars of Tomorrow?
4 or 5 weeks.
Yep. So we will be covering a show where all we do is talk about these rookie quarterbacks, and that gives us time to, watch film and figure out who these guys are for some of us. Josh, your next question, I thought this was interesting, was how many of these quarterbacks actually change teams and how many are changing teams for a starting job? So obviously we've talked about the potential landing spots and we've talked about the actual landing spots, or we're going to talk about the actual landing spots. But Josh, I broke this down, so I'll answer this first. I went through kind of my roster template and wanted to look at how many teams I thought would have a different starter next year. And so this is a little bit off from just free agency, but I broke it down, Josh, to these 8 teams that I think will have a different starter. So I think 25% of the league is going to have a different starter. I think Tennessee, Seattle, Pittsburgh, the Jets, the Giants, the Vikings, the Raiders, and the Browns will have a different starter on week 1 than what we had last year, kind of what we expect to be the starter. The thing is, Josh, I also think 3 or 4 of these are likely to be rookies, maybe just 2 at rookies, but regardless. And then I think JJ McCarthy is going to be the starter for the Vikings. Spoiler alert for later in the show. I think JJ McCarthy is going to be the starter for the Vikings, which would make him a different starter. So the interesting part of that is, Josh, I think only about 4 or 5 of these free agents are going to the point where they maybe are going to be able to take a starting job. So I don't know if that's how you were kind of asking this question, but I'll hear what your take is. How much movement do you see?
Yeah, that's basically it. I think that the Falcons are going to move off of Kirk Cousins. They've already.
I didn't even count the Falcons because, Penix is.
They already benched them. Penix is going to be the starter there, so Cousins is going to be available. I think he's still a starting caliber. I think obviously he's past his prime years from Minnesota. I think anytime you suffer a type of injury like an Achilles, it's going to sap some of your effectiveness. But also too, because he's a little bit older and more in an advanced age, it's going to take him a little longer to get over that. And I think that's really what we saw in year 1 with the Falcons. So,
well, we know all of our viewers are going to say he's going back to Minnesota or Washington, because that's all we're doing tonight is saying they're going back to, I know, I'm just saying all we're doing tonight is saying they're going back to their former teams. So,
yeah, well, I think he'll reunite with a former coach.
Yeah. I was going to say, I know Club Fantasy is high on that prediction. So,
yeah, right. So, but yeah, I think Cousins, Darnold obviously will move on. I think Jameis will get a shot. Just like I said, simply because there's too many teams that need a quarterback and not enough rookies available. So I think Jameis by default is going to be somebody that's going to get a shot. And I do think Russ does not re-sign with Pittsburgh, and I think he does move on. So I think those are the ultimate 4 names that I think will change teams to be starters. Now, that's not saying that maybe a backup like a Justin Fields, for instance, isn't re-signed by Pittsburgh and, becoming the starter.
And that kind of, I guess, leads to the next question you had on the list, Josh. And this is apparently going to be a really short show, but we kind of know that happens sometimes when Joe's not with us. And that is, do you see a backup ascending to a starting job? Is there someone in this that's on a current team that you think could steal the job, a la Michael Penix? Or do you think there's one of these backups that are now a free agent that can maybe go somewhere and take over a job?
So I wrote down 3 specifically, one of them obviously being Winston. But I think Justin Fields ultimately gets re-signed by Pittsburgh. I think he has enough fans in that building that, they kind of saw how the offense sort of went like this after Russ took back over towards the end of the season. And I think Mac Jones, I think that's a name that not a lot of people are talking about. He came in for the tail end of the season and, wasn't half bad with Jacksonville. I think some team, I'll throw this name out there. I think the Jets may come calling. Aaron Glenn being a defensive head coach. I think that, and they already have a lot of pieces on defense. They can maintain a quality defense.
Absolutely.
So I think from there, they just, they'll play the game manager role, right? Like that. And that's really what Mac Jones is pretty well known for. So I think maybe they bring him in for, like a 1 year with an option deal. So basically like a 2-year deal. Maybe they end up drafting somebody in the second or third round that, could potentially, lead to becoming a starter, or maybe Mac Jones just sucks so bad that they get a top 2 pick in a much better draft next year.
Yeah. So Joe Ortiz's plan with Derek Carr, just bring him in so that you're so terrible you get
basically, yeah. There you go. So yeah, I think those would be kind of the 3 sort of like backups from last year that ultimately get a shot to be a quarterback.
So I went with you with 2 of these, and Mac Jones was one of them, Josh, for exactly what you said. Is what I looked at as 2 guys, and Fields is another one. I didn't put Fields here because like he was kind of a co-starter, if you will. But these guys with this first round draft capital, the NFL doesn't like to just give up on that unless it's Trey Lance. And so I think we're going to see a situation and Zach Wilson, where Mac Jones is maybe going to get a shot. And then Daniel Jones, Josh, I learned a lot about Daniel Jones post-cut, about how good of an actual person he is and how very popular he is among teammates. And I think that's going to play well to some team. And if there's a team that loses the Darnold sweepstakes, kind of the natural progression from Sam Darnold is Daniel Jones. And I think there's maybe a chance we see him get another shot. But because I think Seattle's going to make a change, Josh, I think we could also see Seattle maybe lean to Sam Howell just to see what Sam Howell is able to do. We saw Sam Howell kind of do what Geno did this year, put up really gaudy yardage numbers. Yeah, but he also put up really gaudy touchdown numbers. Unfortunately, he also put up really gaudy interception numbers. And so there's a lot we could see still from Sam Howell. So if there is a current actual backup quarterback that I think could take a starting job, Josh, the way I went with this is Sam Howell, because I do think that Seattle needs to make a move, and maybe the move is getting something for Geno and turning the keys over to Sam Howell. I don't think they would just go to Sam Howell. Something is going to happen with Geno to where maybe they get a rookie quarterback and they let Howell start because they moved off of Geno. Something would have to happen with Geno, but I think Sam Howell starts. But I love what you said about Mac Jones. And that's going to come up in our landing spots because I went with that exact same route. But Daniel Jones is interesting to me because I guess he was in Saquon Barkley's box at the Super Bowl. Like, people fucking love this guy. And I just
him and Saquon were really tight.
Yeah. And it's funny because, we've spent 5 years just shitting on Daniel Jones, and
we can shit on the talent and still think he's a good person.
Exactly. But like, we forget these are people, and sometimes shitty quarterbacks are actually nice people. Yeah. Like,
I think the biggest thing with Daniel Jones is after the failures in New York, I think he might be okay just taking a step back this year and just getting coached. And I think that was a lot of the reason why he wanted to go to Minnesota anyway, was because of what Kevin O'Connell has done with Sam Darnold, what he's, how he worked with Kirk Cousins, how he's ultimately working with JJ McCarthy. And I think that, just spending that year, maybe backing up JJ McCarthy, I think would be really valuable for the Vikings. Yeah, but also I think 100%. It would be really valuable for Daniel Jones as well. And then maybe he re-enters that starting market in 2026.
Such a good point. I like that. Well, Josh, that kind of brings us to it. Let's talk about landing spots. So this is where we go out on a limb. We tell you who we think is going to end up where. Sometimes we get these really right, and you'll hear us talk about it for the next 2 months when we're really right. Usually, we're not even close. So, Josh, let's just go team by team here. Let's start with the Tennessee Titans. They have the first pick of the NFL draft. Do you see a free agent ending up here?
I do. And I think a lot of it is the chatter around the Titans saying that they're going to take the best player available. And quite honestly, I don't think that's a quarterback this year. I think when you look at the skill set of Travis Hunter, I think when you look at the dynamic playmaking ability of Abdul Carter, the defensive end from Penn State, I think those two are just in a class of their own from a talent perspective over guys like Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. And everybody knows how much I love Cam Ward. So, and like I said, the Titans do have some money to spend. There's an obvious system connection there with Darnold. And I think that's where Darnold ends up in Tennessee.
I actually agree with you. I have Darnold going here as well. And it goes back to what I said. They are They are in a very winnable division, and they have a roster that's ready to win. You have Calvin Ridley. You have Nick Westbrook-Akine. You can go get another wide receiver in free agency. That show's coming up in 2 weeks. There's a lot they have to build there, and you brought up the familiarity with the system. Josh, this is where my next part of the year goes in, is all I look for is familiarity with systems, and I did the same thing as you, that there is. By the way, Josh, you completely threw me off with your very small misspeak, because I thought it was the best misspeak ever, where you called it the 6 degrees of 7 bacon, and I'm like, I want bacon now, and it was the greatest misspeak ever. But I also played that game, and I have Darnold going to the Tennessee Titans, Josh, which brings us to the Cleveland Browns. They have the 2nd pick of the draft. There seems to be a lot of debate whether the Browns are going to go quarterback. Abdul Carter seems to be the much more popular pick for Cleveland with the 2nd overall pick, Josh. So I think it's pretty safe to say there's going to be a free agent quarterback in Cleveland. Who do you think it's going to be?
Yeah, I think it has to be. I think with the Browns situation, with them being so far over the cap, I mean, Deshaun Watson's counting about $78.3 million against the salary cap this year. So Cleveland needs to do anything and everything possible to void that man's contract, because it's going to help their salary cap for years, not just this year. But all that aside, with the Falcons likely to move on from Kirk Cousins, I think that the Browns can get away with signing Kirk Cousins to a veteran deal similar to what the Steelers did with Russell Wilson. And Cousins can play out on a $1.2 million contract for Cleveland, whereas all of the money that he's making is essentially from Atlanta because of the guaranteed money.
Yeah.
That to me is the most ideal situation, not only for Cousins because of his familiarity with Kevin Stefanski from their years in Minnesota, but also for the Browns, who are in such cap hell. Now, I think the Browns would be smart as all hell to trade that 2nd pick. And it's not because they shouldn't invest in Abdul Carter, especially, with the Myles Garrett trade request and all this kind of stuff. Like, would be an easy way to either pair those two if they can repair that relationship with Myles Garrett, or replace Garrett with Carter. But when you are that far over the cap, you need to build a team with cheap assets.
Yep.
How do you do that? Draft picks. Yep. So if you're trading back and getting 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, whatever it is that, you can fill out your draft over the next couple of years, to a team that is trying to move up, maybe the Raiders do make a move up to 2 to get Sanders or Ward or whomever. You take those extra picks to move 4 spots down. And again, take the best player available, because that's what bad teams need to do. You take the best player available.
It also kind of reminds me, Josh, of some of the way you rebuild in Dynasty, that the Browns are going to likely, especially if they're trading Garrett, suck in 2025. Start getting 2026 and 2027 picks if possible, because have the firepower ready for when you're ready to be good again. It's kind of how we handle things on Dynasty. And by the way, if you guys want to become better Dynasty managers, check out the link description of the video. Use promo code Club Fantasy. You can check out Dynasty Nerds for 15% off. But
love the segues.
Yeah. I think that's would be a smart move for the Browns, but the Browns aren't really known for smart moves. So Josh,
which is weird to me, because Andrew Berry is a very analytics driven GM, and he came from Philly under Howie Roseman.
Yeah.
Who's a cap wizard. Like, I just don't get it.
It's the Deshaun Watson deal has ruined everything for everybody. So Josh, I kind of broke this down. If they're looking for a reset, I think it's a smart move to bring Justin Fields home. He played at Ohio State. If you can get him in the building, if you can get him out and keep him out from leaving the building, I think that's a nice move for 2025, just to kind of see where he is and where you are. They obviously don't quite have the room or the money or anything to push for Darnold. So I do expect it to be Cousins, Josh. I don't mean to just agree with you, but I do think there's something interesting to Justin Fields coming back to Cleveland. He had his most success at Ohio State. That's not a ton of connection there, but there's a lot of, Ohio State fans that are Cleveland fans. He just played for Pittsburgh. Now you come back and you go from being the enemy to the hero. It would be interesting. And I think, they have the receiving core to make Justin Fields not look like a fucking idiot, especially with David Njoku at tight end. I think there's a lot there. I mean, Justin Fields' best receiver to this point in his career was Cole Kmet, and David Njoku was a hell of a lot better than Cole Kmet. So.
Well, and I also think too, to this point, like, the Browns need to do damage control. Like their fan base hates them right now.
Hey, oh, it's
right?
bad. It is
So
so
like
bad.
either you find a way to bring back Jameis, name him the starter, or you bring in somebody like Fields who the community can rally around, right? Like you need to be able to cater to fans because at this point, nobody's going to want to go to those games. But you have to give them a reason to, otherwise you can't pay anybody, plain and simple. Yeah. So no, I don't hate that move at all. I think Cousins would ultimately be cheaper than Fields. Yeah. You know, him being a former first round pick, not far removed from that, being 4-2 last year as a Steelers starter. He's probably in line for 10 to 15 million on a 1-year deal, yeah, which again is really not going to fit with the Browns salary cap at this point. So, you know, I think it's a solid idea. Don't get me wrong. And you know, we all know the cap is fictitious anyway, so I'm sure the Browns can figure it out, but yeah, it's not a bad idea.
Josh, I think on who you're going to go here, but let's talk about the New York Giants. They obviously have one of the best young wide receivers in football. They have a nice young quarterback or running back that they like. They still have some work they need to do on defense, but I think there's a good chance a rookie ends up here. But what free agent quarterback do you see ending up with the New York Giants?
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of Russell Wilson of the Giants, which, I mean, I guess I kind of get just being like a veteran presence. But fuck that, man. Give me Jameis Winston there, dude. I want 70-yard bombs to Malik Neighbors. Like, you know, we all talked about how electric Malik Neighbors is with the football in his hands. He had 170 targets this year, over 100 catches, and only averaged like 11 yards of reception, which for somebody as explosive as he is just asinine. Like that, you cannot be an effective offense if you're limiting what he can. And it's the same thing that I got on the Bengals about with Jamar Chase for the last few years, right? Yep. He averages 18 yards per reception his rookie year, wins offensive rookie of the year, and now you don't target him deep at all. And it's just like, all right, what are we doing? This guy's arguably the most electric wide receiver in the NFL, and you're keeping him in a cage. Like, open up the fucking cage. Like, what are we doing? It's going to, right now, it's looking like the exact same thing with Malik Neighbors. Yeah. Get him somebody that can get him the football. What do you think Jameis wants to do? No risk it, no biscuit, baby. All the way down the field. Like, picks, go. All he's got to do. Like, I still remember that slow-mo in the Super Bowl, right? Jalen Hurts just kind of looking over Brown and giving him the little trigger finger. Just imagine Jameis Winston looking over at Malik Neighbors and just throwing up like some goofy ass fucking smile, and Neighbors is just like, bet, homie. And he just dusts.
Well, Josh goes exciting. Ryan goes boring as hell. Josh, because I have Russell Wilson going there, mainly because I think Russell Wilson is the perfect bridge quarterback for if one of these rookies, if they're even if they get Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. So I am going to go.
I do have them drafting a rookie. I do have them going like Winston and then a rookie. So
yep. So I'm having them go Russ because I honestly think the Giants would rather play boring. Hence the fact that they're improperly using Malik Neighbors. So I'm going to keep the Giants boring, but I do have a fun spot for Jameis Winston as well. But we are not going to talk about that spot just yet, because we're going to talk about the Las Vegas Raiders, Josh. So obviously Minshew has one more year left, but they can clearly get out of that deal. McConnell's still on his rookie deal for, I think, 1 or 2 more years. Neither of these guys is the answer, Josh. You've brought up on multiple shows that they will be falling all over themselves to trade up in this draft. Is this a situation where is there only going to be a free agent if they're unable to trade up? Or do you think we could see 2 new quarterbacks in Vegas next year?
No, I think you're going to see 2 new quarterbacks in Vegas. I think really it's gonna depend on which free agent route they take, right? Like if they go the Sam Darnold route, which would probably end up being like a 4-year deal, like I was saying before, probably like, you know, at least 2 years, right? I think at that point you probably won't see a trade up.
Yeah, it doesn't make.
And it will just be if one of them falls in their lap at 6, they'll take him. If not, maybe they'll take like a Kyle McCord or somebody like that out of Syracuse, right? If they go with like more of an aging stopgap guy, I think then you're looking at they're going to try to trade up to either 1 with the Titans or 2 with the Browns, because they need to get ahead of the Giants, right? The Giants, obviously, we know they need a quarterback. So in this scenario, I have them making that trade up because I think they go get Russ. Okay. I read an article on the Sporting News because I know there was some fractured fences in a way between Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll over the years, like especially in their final years in Seattle, which kind of led to that Russell Wilson trade. But Sporting News reported that they've actually mended fences. And Russ was actually considering Vegas last year before he signed in Pittsburgh.
Remember that?
So I know that there's already some talks ongoing between Russ and the Steelers. But I mean, again, like Fields had a better winning percentage with this team, right? And we talked for years actually about why hasn't Atlanta gone and traded for Fields, because he's a perfect fit in Arthur Smith's system, right?
Yep.
Why not just keep the band together? Arthur Smith is in Pittsburgh. Keep Justin Fields there. Like, this is a franchise that needs some young juice at the quarterback position. They didn't get it with Pickett. You got to try to get it with Fields, right? Yep. So I think letting Russ go makes the most sense. I think he's going to have options. He's obviously going to make more than the 1.2 veteran minimum that he was making in Pittsburgh, because he's not getting any money from Denver this year. But he's also a 36, 37-year-old quarterback. So I think you're probably looking at maybe like 18 to 24 million on a 1-year deal. And I think the Raiders can easily absorb that. And it allows them to, all right, you know what? We can use some of this money. We can plug some of these holes. So that way, when we do trade this draft capital to move up to get our quarterback that we want, it's not going to hurt us long-term because we spent wisely in free agency.
So you have completely destroyed all of my predictions with your very, very good logic, because I'm going to tell you my exact thought process here. I was going to send Daniel Jones here because I felt like the Raiders would be a team that would give him another shot. I feel like he has the right mentality for the Raiders. But what you said about Jones staying in Minnesota makes so much sense. I could not go away from that at all. Joe's already mad at you. I think he's going to be more mad at me for sending Danny Dimes there. But I'm backing off of that, Josh. So then my next process was, well, I didn't quite have a home for Justin Fields after deciding that, I think Cleveland's going to go Cousins. So maybe I'll send Fields here. But now I'm agreeing with you that Fields staying in Pittsburgh, I think, makes the absolute most sense. So I'm going to go completely, I'm changing my whole thing here. I'm going to send the guy who I was going to send to Pittsburgh to the Raiders, and I think it's going to be Mac Jones. Why not go out and get another first-round pick? Basically, for all the reasons I think they would go Daniel Jones. You're seeing if maybe the rest of the league was wrong on this first-round pick. Sorry, Joe Ortiz is just killing me in the chat right now. You're seeing if maybe the rest of the league was wrong on this first-round pick. Mac Jones has played with Jacoby Myers, so I think there's a connection there. If hopefully they don't hate each other. And then if you're able to get, I feel like Travis Hunter is just such a Raiders guy. I think that would be a really interesting pick for them. I think there's some interesting things you could do there, but Mac Jones to the Raiders, because Josh is too smart for my own good. And I very much agree. If Daniel Jones doesn't go back to Minnesota, I think he's making a terrible mistake. And I am all in now. I forgot about how hard we wanted Fields in Atlanta. And now you have Arthur Smith. And again, I was one who, obviously it worked out well for them, but I was one who was against the benching of Justin Fields in the first place, even though he was absolute shit for fantasy. I liked what he was doing on the football field, so it's not great for fantasy. But yeah, Josh, you've changed my show sheet in the middle of the show, but it's not going to change my next team. Thankfully,
I mean, let's look at it this way, and I'll side with you on the Mac Jones side of things. Chip Kelly is the new offensive coordinator for the Raiders.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, the year that Nick Foles went 27 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, that was in Chip Kelly's offense.
Yeah.
Chip Kelly wants to run the football, and he's going to be smart and strategic with his passing, right? This is what Mac Jones was known for coming out of Alabama.
I don't remember who put the graphic
make the reads and just put the ball in a position. Like, that's what he did his rookie season, right? In New England, he led him to the playoffs his rookie year because he was smart with the football. Everything unraveled when they changed offensive coordinators, right? When they tried to make Matt Patricia an offensive coordinator when he's a defensive-minded guy, right?
Still the weirdest thing I've seen in the NFL in a long time.
So, but I think, and the 1 year there with Peterson in Jacksonville, like, you started to see like a little bit more confident Mac Jones. Like, he could throw the football and he wasn't too afraid. Like, yeah, there were some turnovers here and there, but that offensive line there was dog shit. At least with the Raiders, like, they have a solidified left tackle in Colton Miller. They've got a good center in Andre James. They've got some pieces that they can work with. And Chip Kelly he simplifies things, which I think for any young quarterback is delicious when you get to the NFL. Like that is what
Yeah.
they need, truthfully, because there is no coaching the quarterback position in college these days because everybody's making so much money. It's all about, we need to make more money. So we just need to win. I don't care about developing you for the next level. That's somebody else's job. My job is to get you to help us win, plain and simple.
Yeah. If you want to read an article about how NIL may be ruining the college and NFL games, check out the recent article from Gator J at clubfantasyffl.com. He hits on that point from Josh, is that we're seeing slower development in the NFL because of what NIL is doing to college football right now. Whether you agree or disagree, give Jay a shout out and check that article out. But yeah, I like that, Josh. I think it makes more sense than what I thought it was going to make when I said it. Just like, it's a friendly system. They should do an overhaul at wide receiver with Chip Kelly there. So it'll be real interesting to see what the Raiders look like when this is all said and done. The New York Jets thought they had their savior, Josh. They did not. And they let him know he will not be back in the building. So I'm just going to throw in here, for all the reasons you were sending Jameis to the Giants, I'm sending Jameis to the Jets. They have, Devontae Adams right now. They have Garrett Wilson. They have this wide receiver core. They have this young core that they need to kind of win now. And I think Jameis with this team, it probably puts them in a great position to do so. So that's why I'm sending Jameis there to unlock Garrett Wilson the way you want to see Malik Neighbors unlocked. So I totally get it. Who do you got going there?
Yeah, I don't hate that. I think the biggest issue is that Devontae Adams isn't going to be in New York.
Yeah, there's that too.
Year.
Yeah.
And Garrett Wilson wants out. So
Jameis will bring everybody.
Damper on that.
Jameis will bring everybody back in.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong there. But no, this is where I have Mac Jones going. And I think that the Jets will ultimately draft a rookie as well. They'll probably end up, like I said, doing like a 1 year with an option year for Jones. And then drafting somebody in the middle rounds. Maybe it's somebody like a Dylan Gabriel. Maybe it's somebody like, they stick in upstate New York, Kyle McCord, from Syracuse. I think those are guys that, can ultimately kind of do what Aaron Glenn might want from his offense.
Yeah, I think Kyle McCord could run a very boring NFL offense very well in the NFL. And he threw for
4,000 yards last year in college. Yeah. He's got an arm.
Yeah,
he's got an arm. Sure.
I like both of those picks, Josh. We'll have to remember those for the rookie show because I like both of those picks. So.
Well, when I dive a little bit more into the quarterbacks and especially more of like the offensive coordinators that have been moving around, because like some of them are sticking with me, but some of them aren't quite. And I can't remember who the Jets brought in with Aaron Glenn at the moment.
The connection is Detroit.
I think it was their pass game coordinator.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, basically you're looking for a Jared Goff clone, right? A statue in the pocket. That's Mac Jones.
Or it's Jameis Winston. I mean, he's not really a statue anymore, but Josh, for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm now willing to predict their entire quarterback room. I'm going to take a page out of Hoove's book here. And what's funny is I just edited this article this morning. I have no idea who Hoove has going here. But I'm willing to predict the entire quarterback room, Josh, based on what you said and based on something I figured out. It's going to be Justin Fields. And Marcus Mariota is going to be the backup because Arthur Smith is tied to Marcus Mariota. He had him in Tennessee. He had him in Atlanta, and he will now have him in Pittsburgh. It will be Justin Fields and Marcus Mariota for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Josh.
I don't hate that. I mean, I do have Fields there. Who've actually said Tyler Huntley to back up Fields in Pittsburgh.
Pro Bowl quarterbacks.
Pro Bowl quarterback Tyler Huntley. Yeah. No, I think Fields, like I said, I think he sticks around. I think that, he's got a strong enough arm that he can get the ball downfield to George Pickens. He's just got to develop the accuracy. And a lot of that just deals with the footwork. So, if he spends enough time with a quarterback coach in the offseason and can really start to iron out some of these details, it's clear he has talent. Like, I'm not denying that. And we know how well he can run the football. And honestly, like, fantasy managers, we want Justin Fields to start because he racks up 800 rushing yards every freaking season. So, yeah, give me Justin Fields in Pittsburgh. I'm all about it because they're going to have to do something at running back. I really don't see them bringing back Najee for whatever it's going to cost to bring him back. So,
I don't know where you got Tyler Huntley from, but in his article this morning, who says Matt Stafford is actually going to end up
in Pittsburgh?
Yeah. So.
I swear I just read that shit.
I just went and looked at it because I'm like, I don't even remember having Tyler Huntley in an article yet. So, Did he have Tyler Huntley in Atlanta, Josh? Or are we just getting confused with former Arthur Smith?
No, he had Fields and him
hey,
together.
There he is.
Hey,
Who?
Speak up. It's like Beetlejuice here. You start saying his name.
All right, Josh, let's wrap it up.
I know, I literally just read it too.
Yeah, let's wrap it up with the Minnesota Vikings. And again, I want to tell you my exact notes. They're going to get a veteran to play behind JJ McCarthy. The two names I put, Josh, which now for me, it's obviously Daniel Jones, but I also threw in there Jimmy Garoppolo because of system familiarity, or Andy Dalton just because he seems to be the go-to to be the backup. See, he did have Huntley to Atlanta, Josh. You're just getting your Arthur Smiths confused. Okay. Yeah, so, but I think it's going to be Daniel Jones, and I do think JJ McCarthy is going to be the starter for the Minnesota Vikings, Josh.
Yeah, I have exactly the same. McCarthy, Daniel Jones. You don't spend a first-round pick on a quarterback and then just bail on him after 1 year, especially when he did not even take a snap for you.
Yeah.
They're going to see what they have in McCarthy, use that cap space to continue to build around him, because everybody knows that the easiest way to put yourself in a position to be successful is to win with a quarterback on a rookie salary, plain and simple.
And torn meniscus is not the end of the world. As someone who is as far away from a professional athlete as I could possibly be, I recovered pretty well from a torn meniscus. I think JJ McCarthy is going to be just fucking fine. So yeah, I'm real interested to see how that plays out. And Josh, that wraps up the quarterbacks. I thought we were going to go short. We're looking right at the 1 hour mark. It was a good show. Let everybody know what we have coming up.
A lot of articles. That's kind of the name of the game at this point. Shows are kind of, easing their way back into things, trying to reset the mentals a little bit before we get back into the swing of, consistent podcasting. We'll try to do a mock draft here or there. Obviously, we'll always be on Wednesday nights here for No Punt Intended, whether it's you and me, whether it's me and Joe, or you and Joe, or me and Joe, or some combination of the three of us. We'll be here hoping to get some guests for a lot of these shows. We did have one.
That actually reminds me, I have to find the date. I am going to have a Wednesday off, and hopefully Joe doesn't need it. I'll let you know what it is when I remember.
There you go. Fair enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll get some guests on board to talk some shop. But next week we're going to be doing our running back preview show for free agency. So
yeah,
especially given the impact of last year's running back free agent class, it's going to be really interesting to see if teams look at last year and say, all right, I got to go shell out for a running back, even though this is a really deep running back class coming in from college this year.
Yeah, one of those guys won a Super Bowl, Josh. It'll be interesting.
It's crazy.
They want to follow that up. But yeah, Josh hit it on the head. We are still doing, the occasional mock draft show. We just did one last night. So if you guys are looking for some early draft trends, you can check out the 2025 way too early mock at our YouTube channel. It'll be the video that's on there right before this one. Bunch of articles coming out. Who still has 3 more of his QB scramble series. I'm going to give that a day off tomorrow. I'm going to publish Josh's New York Giants fixer-upper. So we're going to drop a New York Giants fixer-upper tomorrow, and then I'll drop the next article of Hoove on Friday. So if you guys stay tuned to clubfantasyffl.com, basically for the last 2 weeks, we've had an article dropping every single day. We're keeping that content going for you guys, not to mention, as Josh mentioned, every single Wednesday here on the YouTube channel. We appreciate each and every one of you guys that rode with us. Make sure you check out Dynasty Nerds. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all of those wonderful things. And hey, if we missed anything on the show today with these free agent quarterbacks, or if you didn't think we got anything right, drop it in the comments, because 1, that gets us in the algorithm, and 2, you get to call us stupid, and who doesn't want to do that? So make sure you guys drop those comments. Let us know what we got right, what we got wrong, and where you'd like to see your favorite quarterback or favorite team end up in free agency. Always remember, folks, defense wins championships. Offense wins fantasy football. We will see you guys next week for the free agent running backs. Have a great night.